It began in the cold dawn of a September morning. For months, Ukrainian forces had quietly prepared. Drones humming in hidden workshops, special units training in the forests, and commanders sketching out impossible plans that Moscow dismissed as fantasy. But when the first wave struck, it wasn't fantasy. It was fire. At precisely 2:47 a.m., Belgorod, Russia's gateway city just across from Kharkiv, lit up with explosions. Ukrainian drones pierced the night sky, their engines screaming like mechanical hornets. One after another, they dove into fuel depots and communications hubs. Flames erupted across the city, painting the horizon orange. For Russia, Belgorod was supposed to be safe, fortified, heavily supplied, and beyond reach. But as the smoke rose, it became clear the war had crossed the border. Residents awoke to chaos. Sirens wailed, streets jammed with fleeing civilians, and panicked soldiers fired blindly into the sky. By sunrise, Ukrainian special units had already slipped past border defenses, targeting ammunition depots and air defense batteries. In a daring move, Ukrainian armored columns surged forward, not just raiding, but holding ground. It was unthinkable, Ukrainian troops on Russian soil. Social media lit up with footage of burning convoys and Russian soldiers abandoning their posts. By the third day, Belgorod's command structure had collapsed. Russian officers tried to regroup, but every move was anticipated. Ukraine wasn't just attacking, it was dismantling Russia's ability to respond. And then came the shocking announcement from Kiev. Belgorod is no longer a staging ground for aggression. It is liberated territory. As Belgorod burned, Ukrainian generals turned their eyes north. The next target was Kursk, a city steeped in World War II history, the site of the largest tank battle in history. Now, it was about to witness another historic fight. Ukrainian artillery hammered Russian positions day and night. Bridges were destroyed, cutting off resupply lines. Drone swarms darkened the skies, disabling air defenses. Russian reinforcements that tried to push south found themselves trapped in ambushes. On the fourth night, Ukrainian mechanized brigades surged into Kursk's outskirts. Tank barrels flashed in the dark, and firefights erupted street by street. By dawn, Ukrainian flags flew over government buildings. The symbolism was undeniable. Kursk, once a Soviet symbol of victory, was now a Ukrainian breakthrough. Russia reeled, trying desperately to stabilize the front, but Ukraine pressed harder. In a matter of weeks, Ukrainian units pushed deeper into Bryansk Oblast. Here, resistance was fiercer. Russian forces fortified choke points, mined highways, and called in wave after wave of airstrikes. Yet the Ukrainians adapted. Mobile artillery units struck and vanished before jets could lock on. Small sabotage teams targeted rail lines, severing Moscow's lifeline to the front. For ordinary Russians in Bryansk, fear turned into dread. Whispers spread through villages. The war is here. It's no longer Ukraine's war, it's ours. The Kremlin could no longer deny it. Russian citizens watched in disbelief as Ukrainian raids crept closer to Moscow itself. The once impenetrable capital suddenly felt vulnerable. At midnight, swarms of Ukrainian drones streaked toward the city. Air defenses lit up the sky with missiles and tracer fire, but many slipped through. Explosions rocked key military installations on the city's outskirts. A massive fireball consumed a communications hub tied to Russia's air command network. But the strike that shook Moscow most wasn't military. A drone slammed into the Oko Tower, a gleaming $1.3 billion skyscraper housing defense contractors and intelligence offices. Glass shattered, alarms wailed, and flames licked its upper floors. For the first time since World War II, the Russian capital itself was under direct attack. Putin's government scrambled to project strength. State TV labeled the strikes as minor sabotage, but leaked videos told another story: panicked evacuations, gridlocked streets, and officials rushing into bunkers. In private, Kremlin insiders admitted what ordinary Russians already knew: the war was spiraling beyond control. Ukraine had pierced the illusion of safety. No Russian city was untouchable anymore. And yet, this was only the beginning. As Moscow reeled, Ukrainian strategists made a bold calculation. While the Kremlin scrambled to defend its capital, Russia's second crown jewel, St. Petersburg, stood dangerously exposed. The city was not just symbolic, it was strategic. Ports connecting Russia to Europe, shipyards producing naval vessels, fuel depots feeding the war machine. If St. Petersburg fell under attack, the psychological blow would be catastrophic. And so, as September's final week began, Ukraine prepared its boldest strike yet. Hundreds of drones were fitted with extended-range warheads. Cyber units infiltrated Russian power grids, ready to plunge entire districts into blackout. Special forces moved silently along supply routes, preparing sabotage from within. The stage was set. At exactly 3:14 a.m., air raid sirens howled across St. Petersburg. What followed would change the war forever. At 3:14 a.m., the first explosions shattered the silence of St. Petersburg. Drones screamed low over the Neva River, their reflections flickering across the water like fiery comets. Within seconds, massive fireballs rose above the city's industrial district. Fuel depots erupted, sending shockwaves that rattled windows miles away. Residents woke to chaos, not from distant news, but from the war itself crashing into their streets. Sirens blared. Bridges were sealed. Soldiers scrambled into armored vehicles, their voices drowned by the roar of engines and the thunder of detonations. Russia's second-largest city, the jewel of Peter the Great, was now a front line. The assault was relentless. Dozens of drones struck in waves, overwhelming air defenses. Some slammed into naval shipyards, crippling dry docks where submarines awaited repair. Others plunged into energy substations, plunging entire neighborhoods into blackout. One drone even struck near the iconic Lakta Center, Europe's tallest skyscraper and a symbol of Russian wealth and ambition. The blast shattered glass across its lower levels, sending debris cascading onto terrified civilians below. For the people of St. Petersburg, the illusion was gone. The war was not thousands of miles away in Donbass. It was above their heads, shaking their streets, burning their skyline. In Moscow, the Kremlin's underground war room buzzed with urgency. Reports from Belgorod, Kursk, Bryansk, Moscow, and now St. Petersburg. Petersburg painted a grim picture. Ukraine had not only broken the front, it had pierced the heart of Russia's security. Putin's generals argued bitterly. Some demanded massive retaliation, including nuclear posturing. Others warned that stretching forces thin risked total collapse. Every option carried danger, but one truth hung heavy over the table. Russia was on the defensive, and the initiative now belonged to Ukraine. As chaos gripped St. Petersburg, Ukrainian special operations teams moved like shadows through the city's industrial outskirts. Disguised, armed with suppressed weapons, they sabotaged pipelines and planted charges along railway lines feeding supplies to the northern front. A single bridge demolition near the Finnish border cut off an entire supply corridor. Russian trains carrying ammunition screeched to a halt, stranded and exposed. Kiev's strategy was clear: don't just strike, strangle. Inside the city, panic spread like wildfire. Supermarkets overflowed with desperate shoppers grabbing whatever they could. Gas stations saw lines stretching for miles. Internet rumors claimed Ukrainian tanks were hours away, though no such assault had come. One woman, clutching her child, told a local reporter through tears, "They told us this war was far away, that we were safe. But now the bombs fall on us. Where do we go?" For the first time since World War II, civilians of St. Petersburg felt the terror their government had long exported across its borders. And yet, the strikes were not meant to occupy. They were meant to shock, to show Russia and the world that Ukraine could reach anywhere. The decisive blow came on the third night. A coordinated drone and missile barrage slammed into the city's main fuel storage complex, the lifeline for military operations across Russia's northwest. The fire raged for days, visible from miles away, consuming millions of gallons of fuel. Without it, Russian bases across the region went dark. Jets sat idle. Convoys stalled. Entire divisions found themselves without supply. Russian state TV fought to control the narrative. Footage of burning depots was dismissed as minor accidents. Officials urged calm, even as millions lost power and basic services. But social media told the real story. Videos of fiery skies, fleeing families, and panicked soldiers spread worldwide. Hashtags like #PetersburgBurns trended globally, amplifying Ukraine's message. Russia was no longer the hunter. It was the hunted. By the end of the second week, Ukraine had withdrawn most of its special forces, leaving behind a city in shock and a government scrambling. St. Petersburg was not occupied, but it was scarred, humiliated, and shaken to its core. For Russia, the psychological impact was devastating. For Ukraine, it was a triumph of audacity. They had carried the war deep into enemy territory, striking not just with weapons but with fear. Back in Kiev, President Zelensky addressed the world. "We told them, no city in Ukraine is safe until no city in Russia feels safe. Now they understand. This is not just our war. This is the truth they cannot escape." The chamber erupted in applause. Ukraine's gamble had paid off, not by conquering Russian cities, but by exposing the Kremlin's vulnerability. St. Petersburg smoldered for weeks. Blackened warehouses, shattered glass towers, burned-out convoys, scars of a war Russia had never believed would reach its soil. For its people, the message was clear. The conflict they had been told was distant had come home. And across the border, Ukrainian soldiers dug in, preparing for whatever came next. The battle for Belgorod, Kursk, Moscow, and St. Petersburg. Petersburg was not the end. It was only the beginning of a new phase of war.